In the final days of the 41st millennium, the largest tendril of Hive Fleet Leviathan ever recorded descended upon Baal, homeworld of the Blood Angel Space Marines, and its twin moons of Baal Prime and Baal Secundus. The battle which followed would be the bloodiest and most costly in the noble history of the sons of Sanguinius. Chapter Master Dante, Lord of the Blood Angels and one of the most honoured and respected warriors in the Imperium, had long known of the Tyrannid menace approaching Baal. Only months ago the Cryptus system, the shield of fortified worlds guarding the approach to the Blood Angels' homeworld, had fallen, overwhelmed by the sheer immensity of Hive Fleet Leviathan. Baal was next, and though its guardians were amongst the mightiest warriors in the galaxy, the Blood Angels could not stand alone. Knowing that the fate of his chapter, and perhaps of the Imperium itself, would rest upon the defence of Baal, Dante sent out the call to the Blood Angels' successor chapters, telling of the doom that was approaching the homeworld of their beloved progenitor, Sanguinius. All came to the Blood Angels' aid, from the ferocious flesh-tearers to the noble blood-drinkers, and even the savage insular warriors of the Carmine Blades. Every single battle brother would be vital in the upcoming war, for the oncoming Tyrannid fleet was enormous, by far the largest Tyrannid host ever recorded by the Imperium. Hundreds of thousands of bioships in clusters so thick that the invasion fleet seemed to be one vast many-limbed organism surged towards Baal. The Blood Angels' own fleet met them head-on, its numbers bolstered by the presence of several spaceborne successor chapters. The sky above Baal erupted in a violent firestorm as the rugged vessels of the Space Marines slammed their way into the midst of the approaching Tyrannids, launching devastating broadsides and storms of nuclear-tipped warheads. Valorous as this naval action was, it was also hopeless. One by one, Space Marine battle barges and cruisers were isolated and overwhelmed, battered by organic missiles and enveloped by swarms of smaller bioships. Entering low orbit over Baal and its moons, Leviathan's vessels began to disgorge clouds of spores and organic transports into the atmosphere. As the space battle raged overhead, the defenders of Baal awaited the first waves of Tyrannids, taking up positions amidst heresy-era fortifications that had been unearthed and rebuilt by chapter serfs and servitors. Baal and its twin moons had been transformed into killing fields, dotted with artillery redoubts, mine-laced choke points and criss-crossing fire zones. Bodies. Amidst this carpet of living flesh loomed colossal synapse creatures, hive tyrants and giant tervigons which spewed out gaunts by the score. These monsters directed the swarms around them even as they unleashed salvos of burning plasma, or tore great rents in the fortifications with massive weapon limbs. Gene-stealer broods swept into these breaches, where the fighting descended into frantic hand-to-hand slaughter. At the rear of the Tyrannid swarms, a hulking creature surveyed the carnage, observing the Blood Angel's strategies, directing its lesser kin to counter their every move with a cunning born of eons-long warfare. The swarmlord, herald of the hive mind, had been spawned anew to ensure the Blood Angel's demise. Over the course of weeks, the scions of Sanguinius hurled back 19 waves of Tyrannid assaults, fighting with a valor and skill that honoured the memory of their fallen Primarch. Blood drinkers fought back-to-back with angels in carmine, forming a circle of blades and bolters against phalanxes of advancing Tyrannid warriors. Blood Angels' assault marines leapt into the heart of the enemy swarm, hunting the largest and most ferocious monsters. Amidst rad-scorched desert valleys, massed formations of tanks and artillery clashed with stampedes of charging carnifexes in a grinding, churning maelstrom of metal and flesh. As brave as the defence of Baal was, it could not last. With every Tyrannid attack, more battle brothers were slain. 5 chapter masters amongst the Blood Angels' successor chapters gave their lives to hold back the surging tide. But as the bodies piled higher, it seemed such selfless sacrifice would be for naught. Baal was ready to fall. It was at this dark hour that a fresh calamity was unleashed upon the Baal system. In a cataclysmic eruption of empiric energy, the galaxy-spanning warp storm known as the Great Rift tore open. The skies above Baal burned with etheric fire, and within the roiling depths of the immaterium, ancient malevolent beings turned their dread gaze upon the material realm. Upon Baal Prime, the Blood Angel successors unleashed the full measure of their hatred against the Tyrannid swarms. It was as the fighting upon the moon was at its most ferocious that reality tore open, and the scent of brimstone and burning blood filled the air. With a bellowed chorus of praises to the blood god Khorne, demonic legions boiled from the widening rift. At their head came a creature drawn from the blackest of nightmares, a bat-winged monstrosity wielding a rune-marked axe in one clawed fist and a barbed whip in the other. This was Kabanda, bloodthirster of Khorne. No foe was more hated by the sons of Sanguinius. For thousands of years ago, Kabanda had stoked in them the red thirst, the genetic curse which had so ravaged the chapter. Kabanda sought the sole honor of slaughtering the Blood Angels, and had no intention of allowing the Tyranids to interfere before the time of his triumph was at hand. The Bloodthirster's legions fell upon both Tyranids and defenders of Baal, and Xenos and transhuman blood was spilled in torrents. Tyranid warriors hacked and tore at leering bloodletters, while stampedes of bloodcrushers swept across the gore-splattered earth, smashing termagants beneath their brazen hooves. Kabanda stalked through the madness of battle, reaping a devastating toll upon all in his path, with great swipes of his dread weapons. The Space Marine defenders, led by Chapter Master Gabriel Seth of the Flesh Tearers, fell back, harried on all sides. Only the sacrifice of the Knights of Blood, an excommunicated successor chapter, who had nonetheless been accepted as allies by Chapter Master Dante, allowed the survivors to board their vessels and escape, as Baal Prime was overwhelmed by warp-spawned monstrosities. As Seth's forces retreated, they caught one last glimpse of the Knights of Blood, hurling themselves into the thick of close combat with mindless ferocity, fully enveloped by the madness of the Black Rage. In Baal's orbit, thousands of Hive Fleet Leviathan's bioships were snatched into the warp by coils of empiric energy or swallowed by rifts in space. Soon, only the burning remnants of gutted Hive ships remained, drawn in by Baal's gravitic pull to rain down upon its ravaged surface. Below this raging inferno, Chapter Master Dante led his few remaining warriors in a fighting retreat to the walls of the Blood Angels' fortress monastery. Time itself was a victim of the surging empiric insanity. It seemed as if the carnage stretched on for years, as Xenos and Space Marine fought and slew, racing towards a mutual annihilation. Forward strode the swarmlord, entering the fray at this vital juncture, carving Space Marines apart with every slice of its jagged boneswords. Exhausted and filled with sorrow, yet defiant as ever, Dante hacked his way through the press of Xenos flesh with the Axe Mortalis, seeking the swarmlord's head. Under the burning sky the two duelled, until Dante, bleeding from a dozen mortal wounds, cut the creature down. As Dante collapsed, his anguished warriors straining to reach his prone body, the tortured skies finally cleared. The storm had passed, and where before the Tyranid armada had blotted the sky, not a single Xenos vessel remained. In their place were majestic Imperial ships. Primarch Robuta Guilliman, the resurrected avenging sun, had arrived at the head of the Indomitus crusade. Now it was drop pods and Stormraven gunships which dotted the skies above Baal, as Guilliman and his warriors crashed down into the midst of the Tyranid swarm. The Hive Fleet's remaining ground force still outnumbered the Space Marines, but the destruction of the Tyranid fleet left it reeling, as Hormagaunts and Termagants reverted to their frenzied predatory instincts. With the Primaris Space Marines, a new breed of Genhanced warriors, birthed from the vaults of Mars, fighting at Guilliman's side, unleashing devastatingly accurate salvos from their bolt rifles, the mighty host of Leviathan was cut to pieces. Individual clusters of organisms fled into Baal's radioactive wastes. It would take many months to hunt down and eliminate them all, but Baal had been saved. Gravely wounded but still alive, Chapter Master Dante bent the knee before Primarch Guilliman. In Dante and the surviving Blood Angels, Guilliman recognized a noble spirit. A flickering flame kept alive from the Imperium's glorious past. His gift to them was mighty indeed. Formations of Primaris Space Marines with which to bolster their devastated ranks, derived from the bloodline of Sanguinius. Of Hive Fleet Leviathan's bioships there was no sign. Upon Baal Prime not a scrap of life remained. The demons had vanished back into the warp, leaving behind an ominous warning, mountains of Tyranid skulls piled impossibly high. These ziggurats formed the reviled symbol of Kabanda, a grim message to his eternal nemesis. For now, the menace of Leviathan had been defeated, but the trials of the Blood Angels were far from over.